I never thought my life would take such a dramatic turn in such a short time. My name is Sarah, and until a few months ago, my existence followed a predictable and secure routine. Married for 5 years to Eric, a successful lawyer, I lived in a beautiful suburban house and worked as an editor at a prestigious publishing company. We had a comfortable life, but something was missing. That spark, that excitement that makes you wake up each morning anticipating what the day might bring. Everything changed the day I decided to sign up for yoga classes. I was looking for something to relieve work stress and maybe find some inner peace. What I didn't expect was to find such a deep connection with someone who would change my life forever. The yoga studio was an oasis of tranquility in the middle of the city, polished wooden floors, soft beige walls, and the scent of incense created an atmosphere of serenity. That's where I saw him for the first time. Jason, our instructor, exuded a magnetic energy that caught my attention from the first moment. Tall, athletic, with a warm smile, his brown eyes seemed capable of seeing right through me. The first classes passed without incident. Jason was an attentive and professional instructor, guiding us through the postures with patience and skill. But little by little, I began to notice that his eyes lingered on me more than necessary, and that his adjustments during the poses seemed to linger a bit longer than usual. I tried to ignore the growing tension between us. I told myself it was just my imagination, that I was projecting my own repressed emotions onto an innocent situation. But with each class, the connection grew stronger, more undeniable. It was during a private session when everything changed. Eric was on a business trip, as usual, and I had decided to take advantage of it to deepen my practice. The studio was empty, just Jason and me. The evening light filtered through the windows, bathing the space in golden tones. As he guided me through an advanced sequence, his hands on my body seemed to leave a trail of fire. Every touch, every adjustment was charged with an intensity that left me breathless. When our eyes met in the mirror, I saw reflected in his eyes the same desire and confusion that I felt. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice husky with contained emotion, "I think we should talk." Those words opened the door to an avalanche of emotions and confessions. We talked for hours, sitting on the studio floor, our bodies close but not touching, as if we both feared that the slightest contact could trigger something we couldn't control. Jason told me about his past, about how yoga had saved him from a life of self-destruction. I told him about my marriage, about how despite the love I felt for Eric, something was missing, a deeper connection that I yearned for without knowing. As the weeks passed, our relationship deepened. We met in discreet cafes, in secluded parks, always with the excuse of discussing yoga or philosophy. But we both knew that what was growing between us went far beyond a simple friendship or an instructor-student relationship. Guilt was eating me up every night. Lying next to Eric, I felt like I was betraying him with every thought about Jason. I tried to distance myself, missed some classes, but the attraction was too strong. It was on a particularly emotional afternoon when everything came to a boiling point. We had agreed to practice on the beach, away from prying eyes. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky in pink and orange hues. The sound of the waves created a perfect soundtrack for the moment. Jason guided me through a series of postures, his hands firm but gentle on my body. The tension between us was almost palpable, charging the air around us. When we reached the last pose, his hands didn't move away. Instead, they stayed on my skin, tracing invisible patterns that sent shivers down my spine. We stared at each other. Words were unnecessary. Slowly, as if giving me time to pull away, Jason drew me towards him. Our bodies met, and the kiss that followed was an explosion of contained emotions. Passion, tenderness, desire, all mixed in a moment that seemed taken from a dream, but reality always finds a way to intrude. The sound of my phone broke the spell. It was Eric asking what time I'd be home. Guilt hit me like a cold wave, bringing me back to the reality of what I was doing. I pulled away from Jason, tears in my eyes. "I can't do this," I whispered, my voice broken with emotion. "I love my husband. I can't betray him like this." Jason nodded, respect and pain mixed in his gaze. "I understand, Sarah. I never wanted to complicate your life, but what I feel for you is real." That night, as I drove back home, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. How had I gotten to this point? How could I feel something so strong for two such different people? The following days were torture. I tried to act normal in front of Eric, but every smile, every kiss, felt like a lie. I stopped going to yoga classes, cutting off all contact with Jason, but his absence left a void that seemed impossible to fill. Eric noticed the change in me. One night, as we ate dinner in silence, he put down his fork and looked at me intently. "Sarah, what's going on? I feel like I'm losing you and I don't know why." It was at that moment that I made a decision. I couldn't keep living a lie. With my heart pounding, I told him everything about Jason, about the feelings that had arisen, about the kiss on the beach. The words came out hurriedly, mixed with tears and apologies. I expected anger, shouting, maybe him throwing me out of the house. But Eric's reaction surprised me. He remained silent for what seemed like an eternity, and then, in a calm voice that contrasted with the pain in his eyes, he said, "Thank you for being honest with me. I'm not going to say it doesn't hurt, because I'd be lying. But I think we both know our marriage has been on autopilot for a while. Maybe this is an opportunity for both of us to reevaluate what we really want." Those words were the catalyst for a period of deep introspection. Eric and I decided to take some time, not to see other people, but to rediscover ourselves. He temporarily moved to the apartment we had in the city, and I stayed in the house, surrounded by memories and unanswered questions. During that time, I refrained from contacting Jason. I needed clarity. I needed to understand what I really wanted in my life. I resumed yoga practice, but at a different studio. Each posture, each breath, became a meditation on my life and my choices. It was during one of these sessions that I had an epiphany. Yoga had taught me about the importance of balance, not just in the body, but in life. I realized that what I felt for Jason wasn't love, but a projection of what I felt was missing in my life. The excitement, the passion, the novelty, but love, true love, was what I had with Eric. A love that I had taken for granted, that I had neglected, but that was still there, waiting to be rediscovered. My story is not over yet. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you. Back to the story. With this new clarity, I decided to fight for my marriage. I wrote a long letter to Eric, pouring my heart into every word. I told him about my fears, my insecurities, how I had confused, the excitement of something new with true love. I asked for a chance to rebuild what we had, to rediscover the passion and connection that had united us in the first place. Eric's response came a few days later. He invited me to dinner at a small restaurant where we had had our first date. When I saw him sitting at the table with a red rose in front of him, I felt my heart skip a beat. It was like seeing him for the first time again. That night, we talked like we hadn't in years. We laughed, we cried, we held hands across the table. Eric confessed that he too had felt something was missing, but hadn't known how to express it. My honesty about Jason, though painful, had been the catalyst we needed to face the problems in our relationship. We decided to give ourselves a second chance, but this time, with our eyes wide open, we committed to working on our communication, to not taking our love for granted, to keeping alive the spark that had united us in the first place. The following months were a period of reconstruction and rediscovery. We picked up old shared passions like traveling and cooking together. We signed up for dance classes, laughing at our clumsy first steps. Every night, before bed, we shared 3 things we were grateful for that day. But I knew there was one more thing I needed to do to completely close this chapter of my life. With Eric's support, I contacted Jason. We met at a neutral cafe, far from the places that had witnessed our brief but intense connection. Jason greeted me with a sad but understanding smile. I thanked him for what we had shared, for helping me realize what I truly valued in my life. I asked for forgiveness for involving him in such a complicated situation. "There's nothing to forgive, Sarah," he told me, his eyes full of a mixture of love and resignation. "What we had was real, but we both know it wasn't our destiny to be together. I'm glad you found your way back to your true love." We said goodbye with a hug that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of a new one. As I walked back home, I felt as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had faced my fears, I had been honest with myself and others, and I had found my way back to where I truly belonged. That night, when Eric asked me how it all went, I could look him in the eyes without any shadow of doubt or guilt. "I'm home," I told him simply, and the words had never been more true. The following years brought their own challenges. Of course, marriage isn't a fairy tale, it's constant work. But each obstacle, each argument, each difficult moment only served to strengthen our connection. We learned to communicate better, to not hold grudges, to celebrate our differences as much as our similarities. I continued practicing yoga, but now it was something I shared with Eric. We would watch the sunrise together on the beach, our bodies moving in unison, our breaths synchronized. Those moments became a tangible reminder of our connection, of how we had learned to move together through life, supporting each other, finding balance in our differences. Looking back, I realized that the experience with Jason, though painful and confusing at the time, was a gift in disguise. It forced me to face the cracks in my marriage, to recognize what I truly valued in my life. It taught me that true love isn't always fireworks and butterflies in the stomach. Sometimes it's the comfort of a familiar embrace, the security of a hand that has held yours through life's ups and downs. Eric and I renewed our vows on our 10th anniversary. It was an intimate ceremony, on the same beach where I'd once been on the verge of losing it all. As we exchanged rings, our eyes full of tears of joy, I felt a deep gratitude for the journey that had brought us to this moment. "I choose you," I told him, my voice trembling with emotion. "I choose you today and every day, with your virtues and your flaws, with our good moments and bad. I choose you because with you, I am the best version of myself." Eric looked at me with those eyes I knew so well, that had seen the best and worst of me, and smiled. "And I choose you, Sarah. For your strength, your honesty, your capacity to love deeply, I choose you because with you, life is an adventure I want to live every day." That night, as we danced under the stars, surrounded by our loved ones, I realized that I had found something more valuable than ephemeral passion or the excitement of something new. I had found a mature, deep, and resilient love, a love that had been tested and had come out stronger. The following years brought new challenges and joys. We decided to adopt, and our home was filled with the laughter and wonderful chaos of two siblings, Matt and Lucy. Seeing Eric as a father only reinforced my love for him. His patience, his tenderness, the way he could make the kids laugh even in their worst moments. All of that made me fall in love with him over and over again. Our life wasn't perfect. Of course, we had arguments, moments of frustration and tiredness. But we had learned to navigate these turbulent waters together, to communicate openly, to not let small resentments accumulate. As the children grew, Eric and I made sure to keep our connection alive. We instituted the tradition of Friday dates, where we took turns planning a special outing each week. Sometimes it was as simple as a picnic in the park. Other times we ventured to try a new restaurant or see a play. It was during one of these dates, as we walked along the beach at sunset, when Eric surprised me with a question. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked, his voice soft but serious, not exploring what could have been with Jason. I stopped, taking his hands in mine and looking him directly in the eyes. "Not for a second," I replied with total honesty. What happened with Jason was a catalyst, something I needed to realize what I really had. Why with you, but never, not once have I wished things had been different. Eric's smile lit up his face, and he drew me in for a kiss that left me breathless, reminding me that the passion in our marriage was far from extinguished. As we grew older together, our connection only deepened. We celebrated our children's achievements, consoled them in their failures, and supported each other through the loss of our parents. Each shared experience was another thread in the tapestry of our life together. We picked up old hobbies and discovered new ones. Eric took up photography, capturing moments of our daily life that I treasured. I discovered a passion for gardening, transforming our backyard into an oasis of colour and life. Together, we learned pottery, laughing at our failed attempts and celebrating our small victories. Our yoga practice evolved with us. We no longer sought the most challenging poses or the most intense sequences. Instead, we found joy in gentle, mindful movements, in the stillness of shared meditation. Those moments on our mats, side by side, became a sacred ritual, a time to connect not only with our bodies but with each other. When our children left for college, we faced the empty nest together. It was a period of adjustment, of course, but also of rediscovery. We travelled more, exploring places we had always dreamed of visiting. We volunteered in the community, finding satisfaction in helping others. It was during one of these trips, as we explored the ancient ruins of Machu Picchu, when I had a revelation. We were standing at the top of the mountain, watching the clouds swirl around the surrounding peaks, when the enormity of our journey together hit me. "You know what?" I said to Eric, squeezing his hand. "I think this is what I've always been looking for. Not the excitement of something new, not the adrenaline of a forbidden adventure. This moment, here with you, after everything we've been through together. This connection we've built over the years. This is true love." Eric looked at me, his eyes shining with contained emotion. "I know," he said simply, drawing me close. "I feel it too." We stood there, embracing in silence, watching the sun set over the mountains. In that moment, I felt a peace and fullness I had never experienced before. We had weathered storms, faced temptations, overcome obstacles, and here we were, stronger and more united than ever. As we aged, our relationship continued to evolve. We were no longer the passionate young people who had married so many years ago, nor the middle-aged couple who had struggled to rediscover their connection. We were life, companions in the truest sense of the word, two people who had grown together, who had molded each other, who had built a life of love, respect, and understanding. There were difficult moments, of course. Eric's health began to decline in our golden years, and I found myself in the role of caregiver, but even in those moments of difficulty, our connection remained strong. We found new ways to express our love through small gestures of care and attention. Looking back on my life, I realized that that moment of weakness on the beach with Jason, which at the time seemed like an unforgivable betrayal, was actually the turning point that saved my marriage. It forced me to face my insecurities, to communicate honestly with Eric, to actively work on our relationship instead of taking things for granted. Jason remained a bittersweet memory, a what-if that I never fully explored. But as the years passed, even that memory faded, replaced by the rich tapestry of shared experiences with Eric. Now, sitting on the porch of our house, watching our grandchildren play in the garden I planted so many years ago, I feel a deep gratitude for the path I've travelled. Eric is by my side, his hand in mine, his presence as comforting and essential as the air I breathe. "What are you thinking about?" he asks, his voice still capable of sending a shiver down my spine after all these years. "About us," I reply with a smile, about our journey, about how I almost lost it all, and how, instead, I gained everything. Eric squeezes my hand, his smile mirroring mine. We don't need more words after so many years together. We can communicate with a look, with a touch. As the sun sets on the horizon, painting the sky in golden and pink hues, I realize that this quiet moment with the man I've loved throughout my adult life is the culmination of all my choices, good and bad. It's the result of years of hard work, honest communication, and unconditional love. And if I could go back to that day on the beach when I was about to ruin everything, I wouldn't change a thing. Because every decision, every moment of doubt, every challenge we faced led us here to this perfect moment of love, understanding, and gratitude. This is the lesson I learned, the truth I discovered on my journey. True love isn't a destination, it's a journey. It's not something you find, it's something you build, day by day, choice by choice. It's forgiving and being forgiven. It's growing together and supporting each other. It's choosing each other over and over again, through good times and bad. And as the sun disappears completely, giving way to a starry sky, I snuggle, closer to Eric, grateful for every moment we've shared and excited for those yet to come. Because our story, our love story, is far from over. Each day is a new chapter, a new opportunity to love each other, to grow, to be grateful for the gift of having each other. As the evening chill sets in, Eric wraps his arm around me, pulling me closer. The familiar scent of his cologne, mixed with the salty sea air, envelops me. It's a scent that has become synonymous with home, with safety, with love. You know, Eric says softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I sometimes think about that summer when we almost lost each other. I turn to look at him, surprised. We don't often talk about that time anymore. What about it? I ask, curious. He smiles, the lines around his eyes crinkling in that way I've always loved. I was so afraid then, afraid of losing you, afraid of what it meant about our marriage, but now I'm grateful for it. Grateful, I echo, though I understand what he means. Yes, he nods, because it made us what we are today. It forced us to confront our issues, to really see each other again. Without that wake-up call, who knows where we'd be now? I lean in, resting my head on his shoulder. I know exactly where we'd be, I say, right here, on this porch, because no matter what, Eric, we were always meant to end up here, together. He chuckles softly, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. Always the romantic, aren't you? You love it, I tease back. I do, he agrees. I love everything about you, Sarah. The good, the bad, and everything in between. As we sit there, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky, I'm struck by a wave of contentment so profound, it almost brings tears to my eyes. This is what happily ever after really looks like. I realize not a perfect, problem-free existence, but a life filled with love, understanding, and a commitment to face whatever comes, together. Our grandchildren's laughter drifts up from the garden, a reminder of the legacy of love we've created. Matt calls up to us, inviting us to join them for a game of catch before it gets too dark. Eric stands, offering me his hand. Shall we? He asks, a twinkle in his eye. I take his hand, feeling that familiar spark as our fingers intertwine. Always, I reply as we make our way down to the garden, hand in hand. I'm filled with excitement for what the future holds, because I know that no matter what challenges we may face, what joys or sorrows may come our way, we'll face them together, just as we always have. And so, with a heart full of love and gratitude, I let myself be carried away by the peace of this moment, knowing that no matter what the future holds for us, we'll face it together. Because that's what we do, that's what we've always done, and that's what we'll always do. Our love story isn't perfect, it's messy, complicated, and at times, it's been painful, but it's ours. And as I look at Eric, laughing as he tries to teach our youngest granddaughter how to throw a ball, I know I wouldn't have it any other way, because this is what true love looks like. It's not about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. It's about choosing each other every single day. It's about building a life together, one moment at a time. It's about forgiveness, growth, and unwavering support. As the last light fades from the sky and the fireflies begin their nightly dance, I silently renew the vow I made so many years ago. I choose you, Eric, today, tomorrow, and every day after, in laughter and in tears, in sickness and in health. I choose you, and I know without a doubt that he's choosing me too. Every single day. This is our love story. It's not over. It's still being written, with every shared smile, every held hand, every quiet moment of understanding. And I can't wait to see what the next chapter holds.